session. Very good evening to everyone. I see a lot of chats happening around. Thank you so much, guys. Apparently, this is the last session of the web series, and we'll be closing this web series, and then there would be something upcoming with regards to another RPA event. Our Automation Anywhere web series is still going on, and I think next week we'll have another session around A2019. On today's session, I'm having NISARG again. I don't need to introduce him now. Quite a famous personality now in the community, uh, but not for his looks, but for the skills that he possesses and the amount of contribution he's doing back to the community. Today we will continue towards the orchestrator session, wherein we left off with certain components with regards to queues. All right. We covered these activities: add queue item, transaction item, bulk add queue items, delete queue items, and so on and so forth in the activity space. We did a sort of a brainstorming, and we showcased on how to creating queue, displaying transactions, queue chart, exporting queues, monitoring queues. Yeah. Today we're going to do deleting queues, download JSON, upload and override, review request, and SLA overview. And to quickly start this, I will ask Nisarg to take it over from here. And let's have another interactive session as we did last time. Nisarg, over to you.
Thank you, Shrippad. Thank you so much. Good evening, guys. Welcome again. My name is Nisarg. So in the last session, we have covered what exactly about the activities which we can use to interact with orchestrator queues and what are the activities perform and all this stuff. And also we have covered a lot of about UiPath Orchestrator from session 1, session 2, and session 3. Also we have covered, as Shrippad said, now today we'll be getting started with the remaining part of the last session, and we'll continue from there. So let's get started, Shrippad. Shrippad, I think you're talking on mute.
Yeah, I think we should. So deleting queue, quite an interesting one. But before we start that, okay, I like to go ahead and unmute all of them, okay, and just get on quick. Guys, can you hear me? I think most of you guys are now audible. I have unmute all of you. Yeah. If I'm not able to, then I think you have muted yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself. A quick question before you would start over here. Has anybody tried to delete queues and you have faced any issues? Or is it just like a plain simple deleting? If it is, then I will quickly move on to start doing it.
Okay, guys, any questions? Anyone? How can we delete queues, and have you ever tried to deleting queues?
I don't think there is anything coming out, Mr.
Okay, so
yeah, let's go on.
Let's two queues. Now, if I want to delete a queue, so a queue containing all the transactions or without any transaction, I can simply delete a queue like this. So I can just select a queue, delete option, and I want to delete, yes, and it's gone. So you can delete a queue simply just like this by selecting and deleting the option. And that's about it, because we can't create queue from Studio. So deleting queue has to be in UiPath Orchestrator. You can't delete it from Studio, or you can't create a queue from Studio.
So does this also need an access or something if you want to delete a queue or something?
Yes, exactly. So right now I'm having admin access of my orchestrator, so I can delete this queue immediately and very easily. However, when I create a user and I give permission and certain roles to this particular user, that time if I don't give access of deleting the queues, he wouldn't be able to delete the queue. So there would be that option available.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. So Nisarg, now we've seen how to delete queues. Quite a simple one. Even I could have done that. But the other question would be, now in queues there are a lot of transactions that are uh,
Right.
are added upon and are then gone ahead and ran in the orchestrator. Yeah. Now, if I want to go ahead and delete a particular transaction, okay, how am I supposed to do that? Okay. Now, there would be various reasons on why one would like to delete a particular transaction of a queue item. And that is where I want our participants also to go ahead and at least let us know a couple of scenarios on where they think there is a need to delete a transaction in a queue. If we could understand that rationale, then maybe when you're explaining would really make sense. So I have gone ahead and I have unmuted all the participants. So whoever wants to take a pick and let us know what is the need behind deleting a transaction in a queue, according to you. If anybody is not able to speak, please raise your hand and I'm happy to unmute you again. Lot of champs over here who are part of this particular webinar, and I request you to please contribute it, because that's how we would be able to share our knowledge. It's not like a one-way session where it's
Yes, Shripad, can I answer? Can I
Yes.
talk?
yeah. Go ahead.
Usually, in my case, probably when I'm sending 25 items into the queues, like transaction items, so where in the case, where fifth case or probably sixth case might fail, queue item, transaction item might fail. So when it again upload another 25 items, right? So before uploading again to the queue, it has to delete the older one. I hope
Right.
you got my point.
Right. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so what Rohan picked up is about, he mentioned that if I processed once and then if I want to process it again, he can delete an entire queue, and that's how he do it. That's a perfect way.
Is
But
there
in
any
case of
other
deleting a
rationale?
transaction, what would be need of deleting a transaction? Anybody,
Yeah.
anyone can just pick up a scenario.
Guys, think aloud. I think you have faced these problems in your day-to-day mundane activities. So go ahead and share some knowledge with us. Okay. Does it need like a warm up? If it is, then I'm happy to park this question and I'll move ahead. But I have a lot of questions for you guys. So I will again ping you, and please don't disappoint me next time. Cool. I will put this back to Nisar. So Nisar, why do you think do we need to look at having an option to delete a transaction?
Perfect. So let's say if I add 10 transactions.
Sorry, Nisar, we can't hear you.
Okay, I think I was trying to unmute, but it showed me an option that you can't unmute yourself. Okay, am I audible now?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So let's say I add 10 transactions, and once I add 10 transactions, and after that I want to process, but suddenly I think that, there's, I have put up a scenario where I don't want a duplicate transaction to be there in my queue. So I have unique transactions, all the transactions are unique. Now I processed one of the transaction. Now once it is processed, it's successful. I don't want to create another queue for a single transaction to be processed again, and I want to process one of the transaction again. So this time what I'll do is I'll simply delete one of the transaction which is successful. So I'll just say remove, and that's it. Now once I remove this transaction, I would not be able to, I don't have to worry about adding the duplicate transaction in a scenario. So this is why I think in my scenario, I would need a case to delete a transaction.
Okay. Okay. Now, if that's the case, Nisar, then I'm quite inquisitive over here. Is because I don't know what sort of transactions are running in your queue. All I can see is status, then I see reference, then revision, and a priority normal. Okay, because when I'm loading up a queue, I know there are multiple invoice numbers, or maybe there would be multiple sort of account numbers that I need to process, or maybe there could be certain GST numbers that I need to process. So
I think Shrippad, your voice is breaking a bit.
hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Hello, Nisar. Or is everybody having an issue wherein you're not able to hear me? Are you guys able to hear me?
We can hear you, Shrippad. Go ahead. I think NISARG has some internet issue.
I think it's on my side. It's on my side.
Oh, NISARG, can you?
Voice is breaking a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Are you sorted now with your internet connection? I think there is some issue at Nisar's end. Dropped off. Just hold on. Let me just ping Nisarg and check.
Hey, hi Shrippad, are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I lost my voice because of the internet connection loss issues. It's raining here, so there is a lot of disconnectivity, the power cut. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so yeah, what I missed?
I think we are again lost to Nisar.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah. So I was. So what did I miss?
We missed everything.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so I was showing that why do we need a case to delete queue, and how do you understand which exactly transaction has to be deleted, right?
Yes.
So please give me a head note so that I'm sure that I'm audible. Okay. Now, how do I know which transaction has to be deleted? Because I don't see the transaction details here unless and until I open the details and I see the details here. So in that case, what do I do is, that's why we have a reference property for a queue. Now, how does this reference property exactly work? Now, if we go back to the data where we uploaded the data to queue from this Excel, and if you check, there's an entire column which column says, okay, I'm not able to put it here. Now, if you see this column, this is status, right? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Now I'm changing this entire column to a unique number for each and every transaction. Now what do I do is, I save this data. Now let's go back to the queue. To demonstrate, I'm going to delete this particular queue which I have already in queues. So I'm going to delete this guy and done. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create again a queue of the name demo underscore queue. I create it, and then I'm going to add the data again from this Excel. Now, while I'm adding the data, if you go to the activity, which is add queue item, you can see there's a property called as reference. In this reference, I have passed row status as a reference. So what will happen? All the elements from the status column will go as a reference towards the transactions so that you can easily understand what transaction I'm currently talking about and which transaction do I want to delete. So this happens in case where you want to identify a transaction very easily by its unique number. So you give that unique number as a reference property. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Maybe a couple of guys are not able to hear the video and the screen.
Yeah, something underlying connection was closed. I think there's some issue with the connection right now. Check the queue item. This is a demo queue, and this is to a demo queue. Then why is this giving issue? Yes.
Sir, when you're explaining, I would request you to summarize it again, is because there is some stuff on the line. So if we have missed something, then when you're repeating again, it will get covered up. Yeah?
Okay, sure. So what I was saying is that why do we need this reference property is because in order to understand the transactions, now once I refresh, now let's say this time I have only 8 transactions, but what if I have more number of transactions? Then in that scenario, I would have put some unique reference point for each and every transaction to identify. Now it's, if I click on view transactions, that's why I added a reference property. Really apologies for the internet speed because I'm running on my mobile network. Okay, now can you see my screen? I have a transaction reference number for each and every transaction which is unique, right? And now you can easily understand which one you want to delete and which one you want to keep. So that's why we utilize the reference property while dealing with UiPath Orchestrator queues.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So if I need to reference this entire queue with my existing Excel sheet, then a particular column needs to be referenced when I'm adding it in the queue. Okay, and adding a particular row, then that particular header should be converted into a string variable, and so that I could know which transactions are getting processed. But this approach is good when you have a sort of a sizable number of queue items. But if you have a large amount of data, then it is better to have a better status mechanism, like some transactions which are related to a sort of a vendor, then label it as that particular vendor. Or if there are certain transactions which are related to a main customer, then label it as a main customer, something of that sort. So for example, if I'm the customer and I'm from SHRIPPAD Enterprises and I have a NISARG as a partner to me, then I would label a transaction as NISARG. So if I'm looking at a couple of transactions as NISARG, then I know of NISARG which one to delete by going into the transaction rather than looking at a reference. And this should be done, I believe, when there is a lot of transactions sitting in the queue, like 1,000 odd transactions, where it's not possible to scroll manually and check each and everything. Is that correct, Nisarg, now?
Yes, exactly. So you can just type in your value and you can get the particular transaction.
Okay, that's wonderful. So now we have covered how to delete a queue and how to go ahead and delete a transaction, right?
Right.
Okay, what's next?
So now once you know how you can delete a queue or delete a transaction, now let's see how we can download a particular transaction as a JSON format. Sounds interesting?
Okay, that's wonderful.
If I have, let's say, a transaction, I think someone is mute. Guys, can you please mute yourself? Okay, thank you. So if you can see, let's say I want to download the JSON format for the transaction with the reference number as 6. So I'll just click here. I'll say edit. In the edit, you can see, I see all the specific data. Now I can just simply click on download as JSON, and that will automatically download a JSON format for the particular transaction. Now here I have only 5 values, but it might be more number of values in one transaction. So you can simply download a JSON of this particular transaction data. You with me, Shripad?
Just hold on. I am with you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So it's getting downloaded in JSON. So what you do is you go on to a particular transaction, you right click it, you click on edit, and you go and download the entire transaction as JSON.
Yes.
Okay,
I
wonderful.
can
Now,
edit and do that. Yeah.
yeah. So once you go into JSON, okay,
Mhm.
you can now edit a particular transaction over here.
Yes, we can. Now you see, I have a downloaded transaction which is 6378144, right? Now this
Yeah.
transaction is with the email. Let's say I want to change the email address. I want to change this email address to test123 NISARG. And this file I want to save. So I saved this file as a transaction. Now what I just want to do is I want to go back to the transaction number with the reference property 6. And I say upload JSON and overwrite already existing data. So I just go ahead and I select the same transaction ID. So it's in transaction JSON file and I can upload. And as you can see, immediately it changed here and it reflected the new email address. And I just have to save.
Wow. So this is on the fly, wherein I can go ahead and edit the transactions using JSON. Now, just for a reference for everyone, there is an application already residing in your laptop which can read the JSON files. Okay.
Right.
Just for everybody's reference, can you share that application name? So in case if somebody is trying it at home, I don't want them to land up into another problem. So Sublime
Right.
X3 is what
Yes.
application that we are using. You can also download that, and when you're downloading a JSON file, it will automatically be shown onto your screen. That's the dark mode that you saw. You can edit JSON and you can again upload it back, so that in case if you want to make any changes to your transaction at the last moment, you can still go ahead and do that. Does that make sense, Nisar?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's really wonderful. This is something which is quite interesting. Even I was not aware of this one. Fantastic. Now, I just want to go back to the audience and ask them, according to you, why would there be a change required onto an added transaction? Have you ever faced with such challenges in your day-to-day environment? You can raise your hand, and I'm happy to unmute you. Has
Abhishek has raised
any
hand.
chance? You all have worked on Orchestrator. You all have worked in environments which are enterprise. Has anybody ever faced a situation where he or she wants to go ahead and edit a particular transaction in the queue? That's the last minute change that normally comes up. If you don't want to talk, fine. Can you please go ahead and put in a response on the chat? Even that is fine. Any guesses, guys? Okay. I think then my good friend Kumar will talk for me. Kumar.
Hey, sir. Hi, Shripad. Hi, NISARG.
Hey, hi.
Oh, my man. Have you ever faced such a problem?
Not exactly. So I'm just waiting for others to know if they have encountered any such situation.
Yeah, because this is something rare, and that
Yeah,
is where even I was like thrilled when Nisar explained the same to me. And
exactly.
so quite a new learning, right, Kumar?
Exactly.
This is
Exactly.
this is like pulling up treasure out of the out of the deep grounds. So
Exactly.
yeah, in case if anybody is still not faced this problem, make a note of it. So tomorrow, if there is any last minute change that you want to do with regards to your queue transactions, don't get worried, don't get baffled. Just go ahead and follow these steps by going into queue. Immediately go ahead and update your JSON and put it back again. And I think you should be up and running. Sounds good, Mr.
Absolutely. We should try even this in automation anywhere. If anything such thing exists there.
Yeah, I think we should do that, Kumar. So maybe when next time Sagar is looking into it,
Yeah,
it is not part of the session, drop in this question and we can have sort of a brainstorming later on. But yeah,
absolutely.
sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually pulling out so many good things which we have never seen or heard of actually.
Yeah, that's what. So like we have to understand if a topic is there, we have to understand it deep. Otherwise, if with half knowledge, it's gone. We if you're using it
Exactly.
with half knowledge, it's not of any use.
Exactly.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nisarg. Now, if that is what has been covered, I would like to understand now. You have made all the changes that you want. Okay,
Hmm.
but after all, there is a boss. Okay, who wants
Right.
to review. Why are you making those changes? Okay, there should be some logical understanding on the cues that you are working on. What are the cues and how are they being processed? So I think there is a reviewer option also available. Could you talk something around it?
Right. So yeah. So this topic is something somewhat which is untouched most of the cases, because what happens that level nobody reaches with a full-fledged team. So let's say you can enable reviewer only when your queue is either failed or it is abandoned. Now, when I'm talking about failed and abandoned, so failed means it would be an application exception, which would be triggered, and that triggered application exception would definitely make the transaction as fail. And abandoned when my transaction is in progress more than 24 hours. So let's say my transaction is in progress and it's in progress for more than 24 hours, it automatically goes in abandoned state. Now in both the scenario, now you can see I have all the statuses as new. So I would not be having the option to mark as a reviewer, sorry, assign a reviewer here. These are disabled options. But if my transaction item is failed and abandoned, in that scenario, I can assign a reviewer. Now in case to assign a reviewer, I have to have a complete team in the users section, where I can go ahead and assign a particular user to review a particular transaction. Now reviewing means what? He will go there, open the transaction, check the data, why it exactly failed. He will try to verify and run it. Once he verifies and runs, now he has three options to do with the review. Now what you do is you go back to queue and you can see review request. Now you can see data here only when somebody has assigned you as a reviewer. Now once you are assigned as a reviewer for some of the transaction, you can't put it back to somebody else's name. Once you are assigned, you have to review it. Now once you review a particular queue, you can set the transaction status to three parts. Either you can mark it as verified. Now, once you say verified, that means you understand and you approve that the failure is true, that it is failed. So once you approve it or you mark it as a verified, that means the failed transaction is failed now. It should not be repeated again. Now, once you mark it as retry, now once you mark it as retry by reviewer, it automatically creates a new transaction in the queue. And then again, the same data will be available for processing in the next transaction set. And the third option is to remove the review request. So I can completely remove the review request and I don't want to review it and it will stay in the failed state. So these are the three things which we can do with a particular transaction when you're assigned as a reviewer.
Okay, that's fantastic. I understand, sir. We don't have that much of sort of availability to showcase
Exactly.
particular
Right.
request, but you have given a sort of a framework on how a review request works. It's like a maker checker option that often runs, and these particular options are more practiced when you have a COE established at your end. Okay, when
Exactly.
transactions are processed in the orchestrator queue by the monitoring support team, these then go back to the COE, go ahead and review it. If they think it is valid, they will go ahead and mark it as failed. If they don't think it is valid, they will ask you to retry it. And if they think it's not making sense to review it again and let's give it a shot once
Yeah.
again, then they would just push it back to you. So these
Right.
are a couple of things that you should be aware of. Okay, fantastic about this review request thing. I was just reading the new version release that was happening, and I saw an SLA feature being available on
Right.
okay. what is SLA feature going to help us, and how is it going to help the the dev team and the monitoring team who has joined us, who are part of these entire community events? How is that going to help us? If you could
Definitely.
something around that. Yeah.
So yeah, right. So SLA is a new part or a new feature, as you can say. Shripad, it's a part of new release of 20 version. So SLA is something which is available while you're creating a queue. Now you see here SLA predictions. Now this is a new feature which automatically connects with UiPath Insights. Now, if you guys have heard about UiPath Insights, you will soon see the UiPath Insights in your orchestrator. As of now, it is not released to all of us. It's not available for all of us, but this is a part of SLA prediction feature. Now, SLA prediction is nothing but which enables you to set a particular limit. Okay, before you process your entire queue. Now, let's say I have 20 transactions in my queue. Now, I want to set a SLA prediction that I can select a process for a particular process with a particular queue. I can say that I want entire queue to be processed within, let's say 20 hours. And also there's the option available to set a risk SLA. Now risk SLA is always 75% of a SLA prediction that you set, which gives notifications if your queue is not processed within particular risk SLA time. Now, if you enable this, you see automatically risk SLA is 75% of the hours that you have added, which becomes 15 hours. Now, after 15 hours, if you have enabled in your profile, if you have enabled the option for alerts of the queue, then you will soon get notifications that your queue has not your queue has reached SLA risk SLA, and the data is not processed yet, so that you can take a necessary action within the buffer period of time. So that's why this SLA predictions is there. And once you complete all this data, once you complete the process the data, then you can go ahead in the monitoring of queue, and you can actually check the part of SLA, and you can see the overview of this, where you can see all no issues, predicted risk, and predicted breach, and all the data in a what you can say a diagram scenario.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Nisarg, if I have to summarize this, risk SLA is part of SLA. For example, that you gave, if I have 100 transactions,
Right.
needs to be processed in 20 hours is too much. So I need to process 100 transactions in maybe 5 hours, okay, or maybe 10 hours. Then the risk SLA would be set at 7.5 hours. So the moment
Exactly.
queue reaches at 7.5 hours, and if I still have some transactions which are yet to be processed, it will throw up a sort of a predicted risk onto your dashboard saying we are at risk, we have 2.5 hours, and we need to process 30 transactions. If you think that there is something that needs to be done, like plugging in another bot or something, that's an action that you need to take. Okay. But if you think that is not required, and if the transactions breach the SLA, okay, that is, it is going above 10 hours, then there would be another insight that will come out on your screen, which is called as predicted breach, wherein it will tell you that 3 transactions have breached the SLA. That's the entire thought of giving this particular feature. Now, this talks about your bot runtime.
Right.
This will show back to your customer that how efficiently is your process being built. Okay, and that is the terminology that is used as bot runtime. In case if there is a spiral death, then the entire bot will start crippling down, and you could start looking at measuring this particular KPI. Spiral death means a bot failing on its own, okay, wherein it's not able to process the transactions further, which is either it could be due to not managed exception handlings, or some various system or business exceptions that are catered into the development. So this particular feature, quite an important one. If you have a chance and you are working on an enterprise one, try to enable SLA predictions and try to check if your bot is running as per the business defined SLA. You're not supposed to define the SLA. It is the business who needs to define the SLA, that I want these transactions to be run during this time. All right. So please give it a shot on this particular feature. This is quite an interesting one. Last one that I'm quite interested upon is the new one that has come up is queue trigger. How does that work?
Right. So this is recently added. Now earlier triggers were called as schedulers, and now recently triggers they are called as triggers. So since the queue trigger has been added as a part of the feature. Now queue trigger is something which is really interesting in terms of it triggers a job automatically when a certain condition is met. Now let's say I have given a name for this trigger as, let's say, queue, sample queue trigger, and I select a process and I select a queue, and the priority is, let's say, inherited. Now, based on the conditions which are mentioned here, can you see there are 3 conditions here? Now, based on the conditions, you can decide a queue trigger, or how can a job be triggered on a specific job will be triggered from a specific queue. Now, the first condition would be minimum number of items to trigger the first job. Now, when your job is not triggered, when your process is the executing for first time, then you can define how many transactions should be minimum available to trigger a job. So let's say I say 5 transactions. So for first time, when I have 5 transactions, it can start and it can trigger a job for this particular process with using this queue. Now, maximum number of pending and running jobs allowed in simultaneously. Now, in my jobs panel, if let's say if I set it to 2, if there are 2 jobs already running, and I have to trigger another process, then it would not be triggered because there are already maximum number of jobs which are running there in the jobs panel. So you can also set a limit or a condition based on the maximum number of jobs should be available in the jobs panel. And once your first job is run, then from next time onwards, when do you want to trigger a job, another job, and when do you want to trigger after adding of how many items? So I can say, let's say 2. So when 2 transactions are available as new, then automatically it will trigger a next job. So based on these 3 conditions, you can play around with queue trigger. I think it's very confusing. If you can have, but you can please try this thing. Hello, am I audible? Yeah.
You were singing a merry tone because of the latency issues.
Okay.
So I missed out the last part.
Okay. So the last part is, let me show you with a diagram here quickly. I love diagrams. So this is a jobs panel, and this is my queue, and this is my trigger. So if I say there are already our next job should be triggered only when there are 2 transactions which are newly available, and in my queue there are, let's say, 4 new transactions available. But if I see that there are already 2 jobs triggered and 2 jobs available, then it will not be triggered. But if there is only 1 job, then it will trigger a next process. And once these 2 transaction items are processed, then the next transaction items will be added in the next job. So in this way, it actually works, where it's quite confusing, but it is a good mechanism in case you have a lot of transactions and you want to process them with a better SLA.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'll simplify this for the audience over here. So how it works is, most of the cases you have load balancers. I hope you are aware of this terminology. This is like a network device which will go ahead and balance your transactions across the devices. Okay. Now such load balancers are also software as well as network. But with UiPath, what they have done is they have balanced these entire transactions to be processed across the various bots. Now, this can be done using your triggers. Now, sorry, we lost the screen, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so how it is done is you need to go ahead and look at your job queues. Now, in your jobs, there would be certain jobs running. Maybe 3 jobs are already running for invoice processing. Okay. Now, when you're going ahead and setting a trigger, okay, you need to be very clear on what should be the minimum number of items that would be triggered as your first job. Now, when you start off your day and when you want to do invoice processing, you are not going to get all the invoices to be processed in one shot from the finance team. Maybe in the start of the day, you would receive only 10 invoices. So your minimum number of items to trigger the first job of the day should be minimum. So for example, I have set it as 5. Now I have got 10 items already there. So I can run this particular job. Now this job gets triggered as my first job. Now while it is running, I get another 5 items. Okay, another 5 items are coming in. I can go ahead and start processing them. Hence, another job gets triggered. Okay. Now, if you look at the second part, it says maximum number of pending and running jobs allowed simultaneously. Now, my 2 jobs are already running simultaneously. Now, if I have another third job coming in, wherein I have got another 10 transactions to process, the queue trigger will not push it back to the jobs, is because the second condition of maximum number of pending and running jobs is still going on. Now, moment one of the queue is finished or one of the job is finished, the third job gets triggered. Now this will go ahead and segregate all your transactions to your bots. So it is equally getting balanced. If you have 3 bots, then this is how you can manage the jobs or the transactions getting pushed to each of the bot. This is one particular feature which is like a queue trigger. So you would trigger a queue when you have good number of transactions and when you see the jobs are available to be run. Okay, this is like another feature which has been enabled. Otherwise, what you do is you just enable you just trigger a queue from orchestrator and put in all number of transactions and you just start running it. But here with this particular option, you can prioritize which transactions to run, which transactions to be halted at a particular time and then pushed later on at your end. So try using this particular feature, okay, and give it a shot in your enterprise versions. I think that's how I could summarize it, Nisarg, for you, is because even I
Yes.
took a long time to understand this one, but
Right.
that's I hope you guys are able to understand this. I think we are covered with the topics over here, and I will quickly move on to the questions because I think you guys would have a lot of questions around the queues because that's a favorite topic for the community. But at the same time, guys, I need a small help from you. We have shared a feedback link to you guys. Please fill in this feedback and share it back with us before the session ends, is because this will go ahead and help us deliver more sessions back to the community and also go ahead and provide a feedback back to our parent company as well as to the UiPath bench, wherein we are going ahead and doing these sessions. So would really motivate us to deliver more sessions and hence the need for this feedback. I hope you would go ahead and help us with that. Without further ado, I will go ahead and start looking at the questions. If you guys have anything, please keep popping in the chat and we take it one after the other. I think the first question came in from whom? I think it is from Kumar. What if there is a duplicate reference number? Can it happen? How to deal with it? What is a good practice to name or label the reference?
Okay.
Nisarg, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So ideally, the reference property is created just to deal with the transactions, so that we should not be dealing with duplicate transactions, and we should have one unique key reference. Now, when you're uploading a database, let's say to queue as transactions, now the database rows, when they're uploading to queue, every database will have a unique key value. So that value you should mark it as a reference property, and that's what the use of reference property is. However, if you see there are multiple, if you allow your queue to be getting filled with duplicate transactions also, then what you can do is you can classify them based on your reference. For example, let's say I have form. One form is for female, one form is for male. Now I can label the data in two references, one as a male, one as female. And then when I'm executing, as you can see in the workflow, if I'm performing and when I'm getting the transaction, I can set the reference equals, and instead of not ready, I can just say reference equals to, let's say, male. So that would fetch only transactions with the reference named as male, and then it will process only the transaction with that property. So you can utilize transactions to classify also, or also you can utilize you can utilize the reference to classify also, or also you can utilize the reference property to get the unique value. So that's how we can use it. I think the question is clear, right?
We'll wait for a response from him. I think we'll go to the next one then. Can you repeat the step, please? I think we did that, Priya.
Yeah.
How to delete the queue from Studio? You don't delete the queues from Studio, Abhishek. I think you delete the queues only from Orchestrator.
Yes.
Okay. What is the role? What is role in SLA? What is the role in SLA? I didn't get that question, Suyog, but why is SLA important is what I have already spoken about, is because if you are creating a process bot for a manual process, which used to take 4 hours to deliver, and if a bot is delivering it in 2 hours, then if there is a performance matrix for a human, why not put a performance matrix for a bot, so that you know if your bot is performing consistently for the same process every day. That's the thought behind putting an SLA for a bot, so that you measure, you know what's the runtime, you know if the bot is having any issues, so how much time it is having any issues. If there is any delay in processing a transaction, then that could be due to an infra issue, or maybe that could be due to the slowness in the application, or there could be a good number of transactions being processed which are not part of that particular SLA. So for example, if I'm working as a human on a particular on a service desk, then in an hour as a human I can process 10 tickets. But if I'm delivering more than 10 tickets, then that's because of my experience and I'm delivering more. But when it is bot who's supposed to deliver in an hour maybe 100 tickets, and suddenly it is not able to deliver more than 100 and it is able to deliver less, then the SLA KPI would help you to understand where is the gap. Is it because that one transaction is taking a long time? Then you need to go ahead and check whether there is this particular transaction is not supposed to be fitting in this bucket, or there could be certain other tabs which are bringing slowness to that particular transaction to be processed. So a lot of things can be derived out of a SLA. Now this is my 7 years of experience, so I'm able to talk too much around it. But yes, I think you should go ahead and implement it, and I think you'll get a better idea around it. Perfect. We'll move on to the next one. Can we prioritize the transactions in the queue so that the topmost ones are done first and less important ones later? Yes, sir.
Yes. So, yes, Dilip. So in the last session, we have seen, right, there's a property while we are uploading a transaction to queue. That time you can set postpone property and deadline property also. So if you want to process few transactions with a particular urgency, then you can set up deadline as per that. And if you want to set a priority for other transactions that they should be processed later, then you can set up deadline after those transactions. And you can utilize this deadline property and postpone property from the studio. Also, you can go back to UiPath, and in the orchestrator, what you can do is, if you want to change a deadline for a particular transaction, you can simply go ahead, say edit, and here also you have an option to set up the postpone date or due date. So if you want to make it urgent, you can set up a due date for a particular transaction, and you can change the transaction priority. You can change it to high or you can change it to low as per the requirement. okay, when the 75% SLA is complete, yeah, that's what. So when the SLA is completed, you can go ahead and you can change the transaction of the transactions which you specifically look forward to complete, and you can go do that in a specific transaction by editing the transaction. And yeah, the risk SLA is not only 75%. You can change that. It's just a reference that it should be 75%. Let's say if I have a 10 value, and if I enable risk SLA, it gives me 8, but I can change it to 5 also. So it's up to me.
Okay, the next one is, do we need permissions to delete transactions? Yes, Rohan, you need permissions to delete transactions. If the permissions are not provided by the administrator to you, you won't be able to delete it. For more information around it, you can visit roles named article on UiPath. Okay, and it gives you a detailed explanation in queues. Okay, wherein you need access to delete and create queues as well as transactions. So if that access is being provided to you, you can go ahead and do that. If NISARG can show that, fantastic. If he is having that bandwidth.
So you can go to roles and you can actually change the options here. So right now, this is not an admin, so I can't change this part. But on a robot level, I can go ahead and I can update the role for this many features. So I have alerts and audits and folder permissions. In the folder permissions, I have access to assets, and can you see queues? So I have to enable these things in order to change the permissions. Now by default I'm admin, so I don't have to do that. I can delete my own transactions. But if for some other role, you can see that role in users, then you might have to give certain permissions in order to allow that particular user to delete or manipulate the transactions.
Cool. Sounds good. I don't have any more questions in the chat. I think we are good. Just a request, guys. We've shared a feedback. If you guys can really take some time out and share some valid information around us delivering the lecture, as well as some AOIs for us, we'll be more than happy to work on it. And the next would be my company's footprint. As always, I've been talking about it. It's like an established company. It's been 30 plus years in business, 4,000 plus customers worldwide, and set up in Canada, Ottawa. We have offices in India, Singapore, and India, and Eastern markets also. 500 organizations, and it just keeps on growing. We are now enabled with data analytics, RPA, chatbots, and that's going to bring in a lot of flavor to our services back to the customers. So if there is any chance wherein you need some consulting, you need us to look at a COE implementation or any services with regards to partner engagement or something, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. We have looked at the talents that we have with us who can go ahead and deliver COE support, training, as well as engagement support. So I would look forward to reaching out to us in case if there is any particular assignment at your end. There would be openings available. Okay. Please keep in touch with NISARG, myself, and on the CRG page, is because there are a couple of pipelines being built. So in case if there is a fortunate person amongst you who would get a chance to work with us, we would be glad, because that's how we would like to share back and give back to the community. Other than that, I don't have anything. I see one last question from Vaibhav Verma. As per the security concern, will it be allowed to change the transaction values? Very rightly asked, Vaibhav. That is the reason the administrator plays a very important role when he's trying to give you that particular access. But everything cannot be scrutinized with respect to security. If there is something where the business is dynamically making change, then such an access is required to go ahead and process these transactions. And that is the reason we have such an option available in UiPath. Your concern is totally valid and it is respected, but totally depends upon your administrator who wants to give you that particular access, or it depends on the business sort of a use case that you are running. If it is a very highly critical use case, then such accesses are not being made available. I hope that answers your question. Thanks. So please try to invest in bots, because that's going to help you in your future and in the upcoming events or the webinars. Unfortunately, I'll be the one who will be on the hot seat, and NISARG would be the one who would be questioning me. So I'm looking forward for such a webinar soon. In case you want to go ahead and understand why to implement RPA, how to implement RPA, what's the strategy, I would request you to latch on to these webinars and also gain insight on the business side, because you have got a lot of insight on dev side. So I'll be also talking more around that. So please be uh, connected with us, and we'll look forward to having your participation around. It's a pleasure talking to you guys again. Thank you so much for the participation. Thank you, Nisarg, again. Totally grateful and obliged for the knowledge that you're sharing with all of us. I'm really thankful, and I'm obliged to and grateful to work with you. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much, Shripad. Thanks a lot. That's a
Cheers,
lot.
guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. See you soon. Catch us around, and have a great evening.
Cheers, guys. Stay safe. Bye.